Hello and welcome to Starts and Grafts. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm Connor, and each week I'm joined by an emerging artist to discuss the highs and lows of forging a creative career during a global pandemic. My guest this week is a producer and production manager whose work ranges from short films to music videos to fashion. When she isn't collaborating with others as a producer, she can be found taking on roles within television, working on set for series including Noel Clarke's Bulletproof and Michaela Cole's I May Destroy You. Nicole Hood, welcome to Starts and Grafts. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me. That was a lot of information about myself that, oh, dab. Boy.
I feel like I've just digged up like your entire past and regurgitated it.
Yeah, basically. I feel like the podcast's over now. Like, everyone needs to know what they know now, so.
How's lockdown 3.0 treating you so far?
Yeah, this one's been nice so far. It's the first one we've had like properly in the UK in our own little place, so it's a bit different. We've been able to be a bit more creative this time around, which is nice.
So where are you spending lockdown now then? Where are you recording from?
I'm spending it in London.
Okay, are you from London?
No, I'm from Norfolk originally, in the sticks.
Good. We're trying to get people from across the UK to appear on the podcast and not just kind of city-based, London and Manchester and whatnot talent. So that's great. So this is going to be the final episode of the first series of our podcast. So thank you so much for agreeing to take part. Like I said before, you are a producer and a production manager. So to get us off on the right foot and so the listeners have an understanding of what you do, tell me a little bit more about what those two roles entail.
Okay, so my job is basically to speak to a director or somebody who has like some sort of creative vision and making sure that we can have like the final product sort of done and dusted basically in the right way, I think is the best way to put it. I like to kind of think of myself as like the mother figure on a set, only because you're kind of in charge of a lot of people.
Sure.
Because you need to make sure that everyone kind of reaches the deadlines and is able to achieve the final product with whatever budget we're given for said project. So yeah, it's just a lot of logistics, a lot of coordination, just making sure that things go as smooth as possible, and obviously with coronavirus, making sure that you can do it as safe as possible, following all of the government guidelines.
Sure, and I'm hoping that we can talk and find out if you've been up to anything and what coronavirus has, what impact that's had upon producers. But like you said, it's a really, really logistical role, and it's not always the first job you think of when someone says they work in a creative industry.
Yeah.
So what made you want to go into producing is one of my first questions.
I think it's weird. I think I kind of stumbled into the role very naturally because I've always been a very mindful person in the way that I achieve certain things. So I feel like with production, it ticked a lot of boxes that I was doing outside of the film life. So I was a very organized person. I was always sort of the person that was able to talk in a group presentation or something like that. So I kind of naturally fell into being the producer because a lot of those roles that you need to take on, I was kind of naturally doing outside of that environment anyway. And plus I'm awful with a camera, so.
I suppose a producer needs lots of interpersonal skills as well. Leadership skills are a huge thing. Like you said, if you're the mother figure on set, you're the one calling all the shots and making sure that everyone's in the right mindset to do their job, I suppose, is a big part of your role, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. You do need to make sure that everyone is on the same page. You need to just make sure that, yeah, even outside of the project that you're on, you just need to make sure that everyone within the team is okay, because ultimately whilst you're on the project with them, I think even outside of the project, you build up these relationships with people that you kind of want to make sure that you're there to support them outside of their professional life, I guess. So it's one of those where you do want to try and make sure that everyone is doing their best, but then you also want to make sure that everybody's feeling like their best as well all the time.
Am I right in thinking that some producers also have a bit of a creative input? Is that something that you try to do when you're producing a project?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like half the directors I work with as well, like I'll drop something in there and there's just silence for a couple seconds and you're just like, okay, so you like it. That's nice to know. It's nice to know. But yeah, I feel like there's definitely you need to have like a creative mindset. Especially when it comes to trying to work out the budget,
Mm.
because if somebody's idea is just wild and out there, like you need to make sure that the budget can cater that. And sometimes it's not going to. So it's trying to put that creative sort of mindset like at the forefront and see how you can achieve like the final product in an alternative way maybe. And plus like sometimes people just get really stumped on an idea, like they might be able to have like so much of it done, but there's that one key that they're missing to kind of like fix everything or make sure that it is all rounded. So it's nice to be able to support people in that way as well, to just have that little added spice to the final product.
So you're there to give options, I suppose, in a sense, that people can't come up with within their own space, and you're there to support in that way. Do you end up doing quite a lot of budget control yourself? You mentioned making sure that an idea can fit within a budget that you've got. Do you work on sourcing that money itself and then managing it?
Yeah. So I think I'm just the queen of budgets, basically. Like, I love working with a budget. I love being able to work with something that's a bit challenging as well, because it's just like, what can we do that's going to look awesome? But then you might have like a super, super awful budget for it. So it's just like trying to be creative in that way. But I think the way that you can source money is also like very creative depending on the project. Like you can go through different charities, you can go through different institutes like BFI or the Arts Council, or you can find somebody, like some people just love investing in film. So we've been lucky in the past where we've just reached out to somebody who had like the money available and they didn't really know what to do with it, and they managed to just jump on as an executive producer on a project that we were doing, and yeah, really helped us out that way. So
Support up and coming talent as well, which is such a good way for that money to be invested. That's so good.
absolutely. So yeah, it's just, I guess like networking is like a really good way of just being able to find alternative ways to source money. If maybe the project that you're on doesn't tick boxes that like some film grants may necessarily like be providing right now, especially during right now as well. Like I know places like the BFI and the Arts Council are offering so much money, but then there's other places that just completely stopped doing funding for films this year and last year because of the pandemic.
It's such a tough time, and I think it's been really interesting. I know a lot of the Arts Council funding came under kind of close scrutiny because they released everything in full this year of where all the money had gone to. But notice what you said before. I bet there's no greater feeling of convincing people or creating a project that looks like it's been made on a high budget and the quality is incredible, but it's been done on such a small figure.
I love it. Like when you can make something look like it's worth a couple grand and you had like a budget of £500, you're just like, yes, yes. And I think another thing is like when you're able to find locations, when you're able to find like a good handful of locations and you get either super cheap or super or like free use of it, oh, you're laughing. You're laughing.
Well, this is what I want to talk about now. So I wanted to find out some of the projects that you've been up to pre-COVID, because I know you work across, short films and music videos and fashion. As always, I do my research quite thoroughly in preparation for the interviews. I'm a bit of an Instagram stalker. But I did come across a piece that you'd worked on called When It Rains, which I think you produced.
Yes, co-producer on that.
Clarify this for me, please. Is it a short film or a music video?
So we called it a mood piece, and it was by a guy called Milo Blake who's doing like incredible things right now. But yeah, so it's kind of like on that line of being a music video and then a short film, like non-dialogue. So yeah, it was a really interesting project to take on. I think the way that I kind of perceived it was a music video, just because obviously there was like we didn't need the use of dialogue during it or anything like that. I love doing projects like that because there's like so many different stories that you can take from it. And like just visually, it's just so good. It's so, so nice.
It's so nice to look at visually. I think it's composed by Delon, who's done the score for it, if that's right.
Yes, yeah.
And what really interested me is you just mentioned locations. For the listeners, we'll put a link up somewhere so you can check it out because visually it is stunning. Did you source the locations for that?
So with that, I was actually only the producer for the rain shots where he's got the fisherman coat on.
There's this opening scene in this field with a tree and this stunning background. Then there's a church, and then there's the scene that I just cut you off talking about.
But no, so the field, I believe, was a location that one of the ACs, I think it's one of his family's like land. So luckily we managed to get that for free. The church, I'm not going to lie to you, I have absolutely no idea how they sourced that. That was RAF. So basically, we like kind of split the production in half because it was shot over a couple months. And then the months where they were going out to do the field and the church, I wasn't available. So the scenes that I did, the studio that we actually got for that was connected through the university that we went to, Ravensbourne. The studio was called the Old Joinery, but I believe it's called Sugar Studios now in Greenwich. But yeah, so we had like a sort of like a deal with our university, and during one of our units we just had access to this space, and we had access to like a bunch of kit, and they were just like, you know, you need to make X amount of videos as a director or a producer, kind of like channel in or hone in on those skills and let's see what you guys can make. And that was one of the projects that came out of it, which, I mean, fair plays. Awesome use of the space.
How did you orchestrate that rain scene? You've got this rain coming down, and there's kind of just tell
Yeah.
me a bit more about that.
That was super stressed. So it was a hose that was rigged up to the ceiling. They had like loads of like metal sort of grids above the roof. So I don't remember who exactly it was, but I think it was one of the guys on the lighting team maybe that went in the day before and just set up this hose pipe. And then like all in the morning whilst we were setting up, they were just like testing out like how to make it look as authentic as possible. But producing it logistically was absolutely terrifying because obviously you're mixing like in the set, you've got like live TVs and just electrics everywhere, and then you've just got rain going everywhere, and there's just no real way to control the way that the rain's dropping, and it's just like, oh my goodness, just like trying to make lunch, but at the same time just like, is anything gonna set on fire right now?
What a nightmare.
But yeah, it was awesome. It was the first time like I'd produced anything where we just used rain indoors, and yeah, it was definitely a learning curve and an experience in itself. Like there was just so many tarps used to cover up so much. We had like electrics just wrapped up in Tesco bags and then tarped up just to make sure that nothing would happen to them whilst we're shooting because there was nowhere else to put them. It was just, it was fun. It was fun.
I bet when you manage to do something like that, I bet it's such a relief. And then going forward, if that ever comes up in a future project, you're like ticked off. I've done that before, or I know how I can do that better next time. I bet that comes up quite a lot, doesn't it, with producing things?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of those where you really do learn about things as you go along, because each director that you work with is just going to come out with the craziest ideas, and each person is so different with the type of things that they want. So it's very rare that you're going to come across like the same sort of idea twice. And if you do, then as a producer, you're a bit like, we need to try and change that a little bit. But yeah, so like the things that people want sometimes, it's very different. Like I think 2000 and God, what's it, 2021 now? 2019 was the first year that I had produced anything on film. And it was a fashion film that we did. And it was only 30 seconds long. But, logistically trying to work out how much film we needed. And then we needed it by a certain day because there was a deadline. So we needed to.
You're limited in time, aren't you, when
Yeah.
you've
And
got
like, because you're
film?
having to depend on like a whole other like group of people to just get that all sorted and processed and color graded and sent back to you in time. It's just, yeah, so you learn a lot as you go along, and you learn that the longer you have to prep, the easier your life is going to be, but it's just never that way. It's never that way, but yeah.
Do you have a favourite kind of style of project to work on? Is it fashion, music videos, or films?
I love music videos. I think music videos have like a real sort of place in my heart, just because like I'm such like, I love music a lot and I love visually creating. So just being able to like put the two together and being able to work with artists as well, like it's just something that I really really appreciate, being able to combine. And yeah, short films I really really enjoy, but it's just a completely different type of producing. Like there is so much more. And just from past experience of producing short films and stuff like that, I think you just really need to have like a good team behind you in every way, because there's a lot to focus on, and if like one person drops the ball, then it can sink the entire ship. Whereas music videos, it's like a little bit easier.
With music videos, so obviously in the climate that we live in now, everything's streamed and Spotify, and the way that we perceive music and music videos has shifted a little bit. I think it's fair to say
Yeah.
because of the streaming services that we have. Do you feel like there's a lot more pressure to make an absolutely banging music video to make sure you get people's attention and people will engage with it?
It's so frustrating. I think I see it in both ways. Like, I think it definitely depends on the genre as well. I think there are certain genres that want to create something that is enticing and that will capture like an audience, but I don't think that they necessarily have like the patience or are willing to do something that's drastically different to what has already been done within that genre. If that makes any sense. So like
Okay.
I feel like people want to change,
As
but
in genres of music?
yeah, I just feel like in terms of like their visual, some genres they want to change the way that they're visually being represented in music videos, but I feel like there's sort of like that hesitation to do so because they don't want to be the first one, just in case it doesn't work out. But then you do have like some people that want to be able to channel the story that they're trying to tell within the song through the visuals as well. And that's where you're able to sort of just be able to create something that's just awesome, because you're able to take a story that's just been written and you're able to try and like perceive it in your own way, but make it relevant and digestible for the audience, instead of just having like flashing lights and money thrown at the camera. It's just a bit more like, we're trying to explain this, it's coming from this place, and there's passion behind it.
Sure. So I bet obviously producing is really collaborative, but I bet a lot of the projects you get to work on then are with emerging artists themselves in terms of musically. So I bet it's really nice to kind of help them interpret that story and take them on the journey of making a music video that, is very much within the early stages of their career themselves.
Yeah, it's cool as well because it's a way for them to definitely be able to develop their image. So it's just like another way of being able to like, yeah, just bring your audience and allow them to just sort of like see who you are outside of just the music on its own. And it gives you like a whole other platform to work with as well, because you can do things on YouTube and Instagram that you obviously can't do on places like Spotify or SoundCloud.
True. Yeah.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome being able to see how developing artists want to branch out in the visual way, and like it's cool having people from different genres that are developing and that are new within the industry right now, and seeing how different and how unique their image is in terms of like how they want to be represented visually as well. It's super cool. It's super cool.
I think there's a lot to be said about cross art collaboration right now as well, isn't there? Kind of bringing in other forms of art to help project the message behind the art that you're making yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's really relevant more than ever at the moment, and it's a great way of making new connections. We've talked a lot about pre-COVID and 2019, the music videos that you did, and shooting with film for the first time. But I want to know what effect the pandemic had upon your 2020, if it had an effect on it to a drastic extent or not, and what you got up to.
Yeah, so 2020 was interesting. It was an interesting year, I'm not gonna lie. I actually started out, I was working as a PA for a YouTuber.
Okay,
So
interesting. Here we go.
yeah, I was doing that. I was based down in Brighton, and I was working for her for a little bit, and myself and my boyfriend decided that we were going to just sort of like go out to Greece for a little bit, just sort of get away from the English way of living and just sort of venture out there. So in March we went out to Athens, and then 10 days after we arrived, the country went into lockdown.
Yeah, just as things were heating up.
Yeah, yeah. So we were in lockdown there for like 2 months.
Bad timing.
And
How was
then
that?
it was, so luckily like he has family out there, so we were like locked down with family, which was really 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 good. But it was a very interesting place to be locked down, like just arriving into a country and just getting to explore and experience it, and now it's like, yeah, you've got to text the government if you want to go for a walk. What? Excuse me?
Really?
Yeah, it was, they took it serious. They really went.
They locked down hard.
Yeah, they locked down hard, hard, hard. But it worked until other people came from different countries, and then it just went crazy again. But yeah, so we because my boyfriend's a musician as well, so we did a couple, like during lockdown in Greece, we did like a couple music videos that we just sort of shot and edited ourselves. And then as soon as they eased up on the restrictions, we went to Santorini. So we just sort of spent
Which is stunning.
three, yeah, oh god, it was so nice. Spent 3 months in Santorini. We just kind of did the same thing there, like worked a little bit, and then we were just sort of doing our own thing, like making music, shooting music videos, editing them. It was quite nice because we had all of those lovely locations.
It sounds like a dream, especially from you as a producer who's looking for locations all the time. It sounds like they were just in the palm of your hand, and you
Oh,
could
it was
just pick and
good.
choose from whichever nice Greek setting you wanted to use.
Yeah, it was awesome. Like it was really frustrating in a way because I think one thing I wanted to do whilst I was out there was start like location hunting for potential music videos for like any artists because I know within like a lot of UK hip hop summertime they usually sort of venture out to Greek islands to shoot the videos and things like that or Spanish islands. So I was hoping I'd be able to get some location scouting on and be able to like advertise myself as a producer out there for any like UK artists, but yeah, no one from England could come to Greece until August, so it just sort of didn't really work the way that we wanted it to. But we move.
But it sounds like you've been able to keep really creative and proactive in the work that you've been doing and kind of adapt to whatever setting you've been in. I don't want to push you too much on naming said YouTuber, but let's just, I'm not going to, don't worry. But how did you get into that? How did that come about as an experience?
It was super random. So I ended up moving to Brighton for 6 months from like the end of 2018 to the end of 2019 to 2020, and I wanted to try and find like a creative job whilst I was down there. I was quite because like the music scene down there was it's always been like quite poppy in Brighton. So I was just like I've got the luxury of being able to work with artists, but then like I wanted to see sort of where I could get my foot in with like a production company or something like that. And I just ended up stumbling across like this role for like a PA for a YouTuber.
It's still digital, isn't it, to an extent? There's still digital skills, I suppose, that are needed.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And like I think my inspiration in terms of creativity, so like to be able to work behind the scenes for somebody who's well known, it kind of gave me like that sort of other perspective on another creative avenue that could potentially be used somewhere in the future.
I think as well for our generation, they're probably the generation that have grown up with that first wave of YouTubers, if that makes sense. So it's still very ingrained within,
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
pop culture that we've grown up in, I suppose. So I bet it was interesting to kind of get behind the scenes of what goes on there.
It was super interesting. It was really interesting. It was, yeah, it taught me a lot. And I had the opportunity to go to VidCon as well. So,
Oh, is that one of the conventions?
yeah, yeah, in February of 2020. And I'm fairly sure that a lot of us got ill after that. Phew, terrifying, but it's fine.
VidCon was the hotspot for the COVID outbreak.
I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not going to lie to you. I wouldn't be surprised. There was a lot of people traveling in from different countries at the time. And a lot of us got really ill after that. Really ill.
It is crazy though. There's so many of us that are looking back at things that we did, like going to gigs at the very start of March, and you're thinking, why were we allowed to do that? That's nuts. Like
I
being in like a
know.
packed O2 Academy or wherever you are, and you're just thinking, that's insane that that actually happened. And I wonder how many people got ill after that. Um, as a producer, you were obviously a freelancer. So 2020 has been such a tough year for freelancers, especially creative ones. And you're a producer, a freelance producer, and there was lots of conversations to whether these kind of jobs were viable. And I just wanted to know how those conversations made you feel and what your thoughts were on these ideas that were flying around regarding the arts.
Do you know what? I think it was sad to see such big voices within government just kind of knock the industry like that because I feel like the creative industry has been so vital to so many people during the lockdown that it's so crazy that you could turn around and say that we should reskill and go into different types of jobs because as much as that totally makes sense. If we're struggling, if we genuinely need to find like other sources of income, absolutely. But when this industry creates so much for the economy, for the people, for like our mental health, just for us to be distracted and entertained during like such a crazy time, is wild. And it's just such a way to project as well, to be able to create something artistically, whether it's a song, whether it's a piece of actual art, whether it's visually, whether whatever. Like, if you have the ability and the luxury to do it, I feel like it's just such a great way to keep yourself sort of preoccupied in a time where we have nothing else to sort of keep us preoccupied.
Exactly, and I think what people forget is the arts as an industry isn't just an outlet for the people creating the art.
Yeah.
It's an outlet for people to then indulge and dive into themselves and escape via. It's, it works on both sides. It works for those that are within the industry themselves and those that sit with outside it, that tap into it when they need it as that escape from their everyday. But one thing that we've tried to do really hard during the podcast is to keep people's spirits going and use artist advice from people from a range of different backgrounds to feed into the conversations and share with our audience and our social media followers. So this week's artist advice comes from a comedian and actor, Brennan Reese. He's performed on Live at the Apollo and Comedy All Stars and won the Best Newcomer Award at the 2016 Edinburgh Comedy Awards. His advice was, sometimes being an emerging artist can feel like the odds are stacked against you, that there's a huge mountain to climb and everyone around you is better equipped. You need to put that feeling that the world is against you to one side and start to work your ass off. Go with your gut and fail again, and keep failing until you get it right. Which I think is just such a nice message to be hearing right now at a time where, whenever there seems to be this glimmer of hope that we can start thinking about projects again, and then a lockdown hits us and we're kind of put back to square one, that it's okay to be thinking about things and they may not pay off, but at least you're still being creative and keeping those cogs ticking. You've been doing a few
Yeah.
things at the moment, haven't you? You mentioned something about the setup that you've got going on at home at the moment.
Yeah. So my boyfriend has a new song coming out, I think in January. They're currently discussing that. So we've just been, well, I've got some studio lights, so we've been taking some photos for his artwork. And we've just been recording some vocals as well for future songs. So been doing some things like that. Also working with other artists as well. So been taking photos for their artwork, and yeah, just trying to find things to keep us going and to keep sane.
That's the thing with things like music as well, in particular. One of my other guests mentioned, he said it's not just, he said it's probably about 20% music creation and 80% actually the behind the scenes things of pushing that music. And that's what it sounds like you've been working on at the moment. But we've talked about you as a producer and a production manager, but let's have a bit of a look at some of the other roles that you've done within TV production. Am I right in thinking that you were a runner on Michaela Cole's I May Destroy You? And if so, how did that opportunity
Yeah.
come about?
So I was bass runner on I May Destroy You, and the role came about. It was actually through the third AD on Bulletproof 2. He put me forward.
The assistant director.
No, so the third AD, he would be in charge of relaying any information on from the first AD to the rest of the crew, and handling like any cast, like as they arrive on set or as they leave set.
Oh, okay.
So he actually put me forward for the job, and I did my research. I was so proud of myself because he told me like that he had been given my information and told me the name of the TV show, and at the time it was actually going to be Jan 22. So I searched it in. Michaela Cole had talked about it a little bit.
Oh, so that was the working title.
That was the working title, yeah. So every single time I refer to it, I'm always like Jan 22 in my head. And then you say I May Destroy You, and people are like, oh, bears. Okay. Okay.
Huge.
Yeah. No, I luckily, like, I did my research, and I think it really, really just helped out in my favor. Like, I did not think I got that job. I left that interview and I was just like, oh, I messed it up. I messed it up really bad. But they called me up and I got it, and it was super exciting, and it was an awesome experience. Michaela Cole is so talented. So talented. It's insane. And she's just such a lovely, humble human being that it just makes it so much better. It was great.
so many people listening will just be jealous that you got to be in the same space as her for as long as you did. But I just want to look at, what it is to be a base runner, or I know the term runner, and whenever people say, "Oh, I've been doing work as a runner," I kind of go, "Oh, cool," and don't really divulge into what that actually means, which is quite ignorant of. So yeah, could you just tell us a little bit more of the things that you were doing on set for I May Destroy You
So
or Jan 22?
so for my job, a base runner would primarily be sort of like at base. So I was working under the second AD, handling distribution of call sheets, um, kind of being the first point of arrival for cast in the mornings, getting their breakfasts, handling them moving from costume to makeup to getting onto set. Just kind of like being like a logistical support person for the second AD and then being able to bounce communication from base to set. So I would be in communication a lot with the floor runners who would be on set working under the third AD and the first AD. So we would be in like heavy communication when we needed to travel anyone from base to set, or if anything was needed, we could just sort of like transport it down and things like that.
Were you able to get a sense or an insight into the content that was being made? Was it clear that it was going to be such a huge kind of landmark moment in television, really?
I said it. Do you know what? Honestly, this is my biggest flex in the industry. I read the script. So on like the first and the second day of shooting, there wasn't really like, because we kind of like we went in fairly easy, and because I was at base, they were like, right, here's the scripts, have a little read. So I read the first to the fourth episode in like the first day, and I was just like, oh my god, it was so good. It was so good, and like she was so detailed in everything that she wanted to sort of like portray in the show, and just constantly, I know this is something that writers are notorious for, but just constantly rewriting it
Oh, really?
all the way during the shoot. Like she would find ways to make the story better as we were going along,
Wow.
which like fair plays to the lady, because you're the main actor in it, you're the director, and then you're also finding time to just rewrite it to make it the best it could possibly be, and it's just worked out really well for her.
She talks so much in interviews that I've listened to about giving the writer and the performer that agency to direct it themselves and to have that control in order to make it the best product or the best, project that it can be. I think, yeah, it's so incredible that you got to work on that because it's a game changing piece of TV. And I think it's so good that that was released during a period such as lockdown where everyone had the time to turn to TV and watch it because the topics that it engages with, such as sexual assault and the effects that it has upon its victims thereafter, is portrayed in a way that I definitely know that I've never seen before, and a lot of people haven't seen presented
Yeah,
on TV. So yeah, I bet that's just going to stand out for you for such a long period of time.
it was awesome.
Do opportunities like being a runner, where you probably have slightly less agency than you do when you're producing your own stuff, do they offer opportunities to make new connections and also a period of financial stability, I'm assuming, as well?
Absolutely. I think it definitely helps on the financial side when you want to be working on your own things as well. But for networking, you will meet the most incredible people on like TV sets, and everyone's kind of there for the same reason. Like everyone wants to kind of get to where they want to be if they're not there already. And I think what I've found and what I'm super like humble about with every project that I've gone on to, these are people that I could just imagine being more than happy to jump on like a smaller project if you were just to reach out to them and ask them. Like they're just so invested in being involved in pieces of work that hold meaning, that I feel like it's not a matter of where it goes, it's a matter of like the passion that's being put into the work.
Yeah, that's great. And I think talking about connections, and we've just talked about Michaela Cole and female led work as well. Let's talk a little bit about collaborating and the fact that you're a part of something called the Lunar Ray Collective.
Yes. Yes, I am. So it was originally Luna Ray. It's now Anarchy Family.
Okay.
It's currently going under a rebrand, but it was founded by myself and three other wonderful creative ladies in 2018. We had the honor of just working with a studio called Digital Holdings, and we just started creating like just short pieces of visual work. A lot were music based, but we kind of like did a lot of experimental things in the space as well. A lot of it hasn't been released. A lot of it is just wild 30-second clips, and we're just like, why did we do this? But it was really, really awesome. It was really awesome to just have like a group like that.
Learning opportunities as well, though, I bet.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And like we've been able, especially because we had like a series called Moonlight Sessions where we introduced unsigned artists, and they would re-record like a piece in the studio, and then we would pretend that it was a live type thing. And we learned so much about just recreating live sessions and that whole setup. And yeah, it was a real learning curve in terms of just like
So how were you passing them off as live sessions then?
faking it. Faking it for the camera. So it was all done in one day. It was crazy the way that we would do it. We would bring an artist into the studio, and they would go into like an actual recording booth with an engineer. They would re-record a track
Okay.
just to make it sound a little bit more authentic. The engineer would sort it out, send it over to me. I'd be in the big studio. Then we'd have the artist come over to us. We just play the song full blast around, and then they would just mime over the top of it. So basically a music video, but not. But no, like it was like super cool and stuff. I think it was like awesome being able to like just have artists come in and just kind of like bash out that much work in one day, and just to kind of like make it personalized for each person as well. Like I think that was like a real thing that we wanted to do, was just make sure that everyone that we were collaborating with, like there was like some reason to do it. Like we wanted to show them in every aspect that we possibly could in the shortest time that we possibly could.
It's really surprised me how collaborative and up for making work with others that people really are. I mean, just from the podcast perspective, we were so panicked at first when we first started doing it that nobody'd want to be on it. And everyone that we've asked has been so grateful that we've asked them and have really enjoyed being on it. I can appreciate what you're saying there about wanting to give people the best experience possible and wanting to work with them and get as much creativity flowing. Like we said, it's a female-led collective. How important is it that in the industry today we still continue to ensure that female-led film and content production is being made?
It's so vital. It's so vital to just get, I think, as many voices heard as possible. And it's awesome now being able to see more females in a heavily male driven industry, especially within like the big sort of roles as well. Like it's awesome to see more and more female directors, and it's awesome to see more and more Black female directors, I think, as well. Just personally for me, because it's something that I've never really seen growing up. And now you see people like Ava
Yes,
Dunn,
is that Ava?
A Wrinkle in Time.
13.
Yeah,
Yes, that's it.
yeah, but she's done awesome stuff, and then I think she's now created like a kind of like a production. I think it's an agency called Array, and it's for people of like minorities or more females just to apply for it, so they can distribute more people from diverse backgrounds into film and TV. And I think like we kind of need that, and I think it's awesome being able to see females just kind of like take the lead and be like, look, we see that we're not being represented enough, and we're going to make a change and we're going to make a difference. And they're doing it, man. And it's awesome to see. It's awesome.
Within the arts itself, there is this shift to try and be more inclusive, and there are projects out there and schemes to get more female creatives creating work and providing more opportunities, especially in terms of funding, I think, as well. I'm also really interested in what opportunities were available to my guests when they were younger and how they made the decisions to go into the areas of creativity that they've gone into. Have you always been interested in music videos and film since a young age?
Yeah, I think I've always been heavily influenced by music videos, especially. But all forms of visual content, I think, have just been like such a heavy part of growing up, especially when you go onto platforms like YouTube, and just growing up with YouTube as well. Like,
You can get lost in it.
oh, for days, for days. But like the competitions that they used to just do, like a lot of YouTubers back in the day, like they used to just say, yo, make a video to this song. The best person will win like a ton of equipment to create their own stuff. So I just remember having like that type of influence, like as a child, to go off and make stuff because there was sort of like a reason to. And I knew if I did a good enough job, I would get something out of it. I lost every time, but like, people recognized it and I got complimented for it.
It's kind of like TikTok is now,
No,
though, isn't it?
absolutely, absolutely. And it's cool. It's cool seeing like as we grow up and as technology becomes more of like a fundamental part of who we all are. It's cool to see like each platform having its own sort of like way of getting young people into the creative industry. And TikTok has just really, really done a great job at that, I think.
TikTok's blown my mind a little bit at first. I was like, I'm not gonna engage with this. This is like a teenage thing that I've not got a clue what's going on. And then as we've kind of descended further into the COVID madness, I started to see more people doing it, more friends doing it. I'm trying to see what's really going on there. I don't know if I'll do it myself. I doubt I'll do it myself. But it's really cool to check out what's going on there. And
Yeah,
there's lots of comedians, celebrities doing some really cool TikToks that are doing the rounds. I mean, Daisy May Cooper from this country has
it's
done some
so good.
hilarious ones. I think she's like one of this. Like, there's so many EastEnders theme tunes of her just like hitting her body in ways that we didn't know was possible. It's hilarious. But yeah, so that was a big impact and influence on you when you were younger. You went to Ravensbourne University, which is like a digital media and design university. What did you decide to study when you were there?
I studied digital film productions whilst I was there.
What made you want to pursue that then? Because when we're at school, there's not always lots of opportunities to dive into the digital aspect of the arts as such. So what made you want to do that at uni?
So I think it was heavily influenced by our college. The college I went to, it was like a creative college as well, and they had like good links with Ravensbourne University. Oh, I don't know if I'm opening up some conspiracy now, but so we all had like pre UCAS interviews with the university basically. So our course tutor in college just kind of took us all to Ravensbourne, and we had like a day where we went around and like we got to see like all of the different creative courses that they had to offer. But then they also made us sit down with like a lecturer and kind of like go through like the UCAS interview stage early to see if it was a potential fit or not. So, like in terms of why I went to Ravensbourne University, it was heavily because of my college. I'm not gonna lie, and the course that I was on whilst I was in college, because they had like such a tight link with Ravensbourne. Like I think a lot of the things that we were taught prepped us for the film course at Ravensbourne University.
That really helps though, because I think there's a lot of colleges in particular, speaking from my experience of doing an English and theatre degree at uni, when I was at college, we did things that were very accessible to the people where I was from, if that makes sense. The
Yeah,
drama that we studied were great at the time when we were 16 to like 18 because it was stuff that we were interested in. But then I went to university and I had such a big shock when they sat us down with all these traditional texts and plays and like ways of working. I was like, what? I was like, we've just done plays based in the Northwest for 2 years and now I'm being thrown all these kind of things. So I think it's great when you can successfully be in an environment, like you just said at college, that then feeds into what your next stage is going to be quite well.
yeah.
So as we come to the end of the episode, I always give my guests a chance to shout out some of the people or the places that have played an important part in their journey. So your journey as a producer and production manager. So yeah, now's your chance to say thank you to a couple of people or things.
Oh, damn. Okay, so I think I want to give a big shout out to the original Lunar Ray girls, which is Alexandra Barbaro, Zoe Hambling, and Lucy Miles. Just incredible human beings. And yeah, they're just such talented women that have just really made me feel like I belong within this industry, which is awesome. Shout out to Anarchy Family, which is the production company, and shout out to Tony Humphreys, the black DJ. No, I'm joking. Tony Humphreys. Shout out to Tony Humphreys. It's my boyfriend, also a rapper, great guy, very talented human being. Has just helped me be as creative as possible during the craziest time that's ever happened to any of us, I think.
Cheers. Do let us know if he becomes a DJ as well, though. That would be really cool.
Yeah, I'll let you
But
know.
yeah, thank you. Honestly, thank you so much for coming on because I'd never spoken to you before we'd had this conversation. And that's, there's a lot of my guests that I do know already, and then there's a handful that have come on this series so far that I haven't known. And it's been so incredible to sit down and have the conversations that we've had, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it, and you've brought such a good energy to it. And there's kind of times I'm like, I wish this could keep going, but there's only so much people want to listen to of me. It's nothing to do with you. But yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you have a really creative and productive 2021.
No, thank you very much. Thank you and Ella for having me. And I hope that season 2 is going to be great. I hope you're going to get some strong commissions on it, and I hope you get the big bucks. You both deserve it.
What a way to end the podcast. Thank you for that message. Cheers. A huge thank you to Nicole for joining me on the podcast. Now, this is the part where I'd usually tell you to join us again next week, but this is the final episode of the series. We'll be back very soon with some more conversations with emerging artists, and if you or someone you know would like to join us to talk about their creative journey, please get in touch. Feel free to email us on startsandgrafts@gmail.com or message us on Twitter and Instagram. We'll be keeping very busy over the next few weeks by gathering more top tips, sharing creative opportunities, and launching something very exciting that we can't wait to share with you all. So thank you to everyone who has tuned into the podcast so far. We can't wait to see you again in a few weeks. But until then, take care.